Silence. That was all that remained after Operation Ragnarok. The Galactic Union had won. Or at least, that was what the official reports said. The Kr'thul Dominion had been shattered, their fleets burned into the void, and the monstrous devourer of suns was gone. But so was the Terran Defense Corps. Every human ship, every signal, every life, vanished into the collapse of the neutron star. The galaxy whispered that the humans had done what no one else could, and that they had paid the price. Echoes in the Ashon, the remote observation outpost of Arethys Station. Commander Lurvak stared into the nebula that had once been the battlefield. The remnants of iron resolve were scattered across light years, fragments of black hull drifting in a sea of dust. Any sign of life? He asked quietly. The sensor officer, a young Yalrix with trembling hands, shook his head. None, Commander. No power signatures. No transmissions. The debris is cold. Lurvak lowered his gaze. Then it's done. He turned to the memorial display on the command deck, a single glowing name. Admiral Elena Vega. Below it were the words she had spoken before the final battle. We don't fight because we're told to. We fight because someone has to. Every alien on the station stood in silence. For centuries, the galaxy had feared humans. Now they mourned them, the survivors, but death was never something humans accepted easily. Months later, deep within a debris field far beyond the star's event horizon, a faint blue light flickered inside a broken Terran escape pod. Then another, then 20 more. Inside one pod, Admiral Vega's eyes opened. Her lungs burned as the cryo-seal released. Status, she croaked. A synthetic voice responded. Hera, the ship's AI, transferred into her pod before the collapse. Partial survival confirmed. 42 pods ejected before the singularity wavefront hit. 23 remain intact. Power minimal. Recommend immediate regroup. Vega's heart pounded. Any contact with the Union? Negative. Communication arrays destroyed. We are off the galactic grid. Estimated location, uncharted system, void sector Gamma 19. She tried to move. Pain lanced through her ribs. But she smiled anyway. Looks like humanity's not extinct yet. 3. Ghost fleet weeks passed as the survivors rebuilt what they could. Scavenged hulls became shelters. Reactor fragments turned into power cells. The humans had done what they always did. Adapt. Their fleet was nothing more than drifting wrecks connected by cables and hope. But morale was strong. Vega's people were alive, and that was enough. They named their new home Haven 01, a hidden base carved from an asteroid. When Hera confirmed long-range scanners were functional, Vega gathered her officers around a flickering holotable. Status of the Dominion? She asked. Lieutenant Hayes, face scarred, eyes fierce, brought up a projection. Kr'thul are fractured, half their leaders dead, the rest fighting each other. The Union thinks the war's over, isn't it? Another officer asked. Hayes shook his head. Not for the Dominion. They're regrouping in the dark sectors. Smaller fleets, but something new. Biological signatures we've never seen before. Vega studied the map. They're evolving, she murmured. Learning. Silence filled the room. Everyone knew what that meant. The war wasn't over. It was changing. The Union grows complacent back in the core worlds. The Galactic Union Council celebrated. Statues were built. Ceremonies were held. The words "unleash the humans" became legend, a phrase whispered with reverence. But as peace stretched into years, memory faded. The politicians began rewriting history. They spoke of cooperation and shared sacrifice. They downplayed the humans' role, said the Terrans had acted recklessly, almost destroying the galaxy. Heroes, they called them in public. Dangerous relics, they called them in private. Marshal Reltor argued for rebuilding the Terran alliance, but he was ignored. The Union was tired of war. Meanwhile, far beyond their reach, Admiral Vega's survivors were still fighting. The Dark Returnant began with missing colonies. Outposts along the rim simply vanished. No distress calls. No debris. Only strange energy readings and a lingering biological scent, acid and ash. The Union dismissed it as raiders. Then, the first visual came through. A Kr'thul ship, but twisted. Grown from the wreckage of Union vessels fused with metal and flesh. It was something new. Something worse. When the fleets tried to stop it, they were devoured. The Dominion had returned. evolved, faster, hungrier. The council panicked. They scrambled for defense plans, but every admiral, every general knew the same truth. They no longer had the last option. Signal from the Dead Three, months after the Dominion's resurgence. A faint signal was detected from deep space, encrypted in an ancient Terran code. The message was short, distorted but unmistakable. Union Command. This is Admiral Elena Vega. Humanity endures. Prepare for contact. When the message reached the council, disbelief turned to chaos. Some said it was a trick. Others said it was impossible. But when the Union fleet arrived at the coordinates, they found a sight that made every sensor officer's jaw drop. A fleet, human, unmistakable, emerging from the nebula. Hundreds of ships, rebuilt from wreckage and scavenged technology. Rough, patchwork, terrifying. At their head flew the Iron Resolve 2, black as night. Vega's voice came over the comms. Miss us? 7. The Second War, the Dominion descended in waves, no longer mere conquerors, but a swarm of evolving nightmares. Their new bioweapons adapted to shields, absorbed plasma, even ate hull plating. The Union fleets fell in hours. But when the humans entered the battle, the tide shifted instantly. The Dominion had changed, but so had humanity. They wielded radiation-forged armor, gravitic railguns, and synthetic soldiers built from the AI cores of fallen ships. They called themselves the Ghost Fleet, a hybrid of machine and human will. Vega's fleet tore through the Dominion lines with brutal precision. Where others hesitated, humans advanced. Where others feared death, humans embraced it. The Kr'thul screamed in frequencies that shattered comm channels. Vega silenced them with a single order. Ragnarok Protocol, full burn. The stars burned white again. The Union's realization, in the aftermath of the first battles, Union commanders pleaded for human assistance. Vega agreed, but on one condition. No politics, she said coldly. No council votes. We fight on our terms. When one ambassador protested, claiming humans were too dangerous, Vega leaned forward on the comm screen. Dangerous? She repeated. You called us because you were dying. Dangerous is what keeps you alive. Her eyes were like steel. You don't unleash humans to feel safe. You unleash us to make sure there's a tomorrow. The ambassador said nothing more. The final stand, HFY. Dominion's queen, an entity known only as Kr'thul Prime, appeared above the world of Zerath 9, intent on devouring it. The combined Union and Terran fleets gathered for the last stand. It was chaos, biological tendrils wrapping around destroyers, plasma storms ripping through space. Union ships faltered. Vega's fleet surged forward. Hera calculated the odds, 3.2% survival. Vega smiled. That's 3% more than we need. The Ghost Fleet plunged into the heart of the Dominion Armada. Nukes detonated like suns. Boarding pods rammed into living hulls. Terran Marines, armored in black, faces hidden, fought from inside the enemy itself, tearing it apart with fire and fury. Then, Vega herself led the final strike. Her ship's reactor began to overload. Hera protested. If you detonate, you'll die. We all die, Vega whispered. But humans make sure it means something. She transmitted one last message to the Union. You wanted peace. This is the price. And then she ignited the core. The explosion consumed the Dominion Queen and half her fleet. The rest scattered, mindless without her control. The war ended, again, in light and silence. Legacy of Fire, when the smoke cleared. Vega's ship was gone, but this time, no one doubted she had survived. Because as the Union fleet searched the wreckage, they found a beacon. It transmitted 3 words, endlessly looping across the stars, humanity still watching. The future a century later, the galaxy thrived again. The Kr'thul were legends. The Ghost Fleet a myth whispered by soldiers around campfires. The Union was rebuilt, but older, wiser, humbler. And every new officer learned a single doctrine in their military academies. If diplomacy fails, unleash the humans. In the Hall of Remembrance, beside the memorial to Admiral Vega, a new plaque gleamed. It read, "The monsters we feared became the guardians we needed." When the stars burned, they held the line. Below it, a small Terran flag waved, faded and torn, but still there, still watching. Epilogue. the last option, far beyond known space. In a region no Union map dared chart, a single ship drifted through the void. The hull bore old scars. The nameplate read, Iron Resolve the 3. Inside, Admiral Vega stood at the viewport, watching a sunrise bloom over an uncharted world. Behind her, Hera spoke softly. We could return to the Union, Admiral. Vega smiled faintly. They don't need us, not yet. And if they do? Vega's gaze hardened. Then they'll know what to do. She looked out into the infinite dark, the same dark that had once tried to swallow them all. Because, she whispered, we're the last option. The stars reflected in her eyes, cold, endless, and human. The end. The Galactic Union Defense Council sat in silence. War maps flickered holographically above the round table, glowing red with enemy markers that spread like an infection across half the galaxy. Every species in the chamber, from the crystalline Kitharans to the fur-covered Drogar, looked equally grim. None dared to speak the numbers aloud. Everyone could see them. The Kr'thul Dominion had taken the outer arcs, burned the trade lanes, and now advanced on the core worlds themselves. For 12 standard years, the Union had thrown fleet after fleet into the maw of the Dominion war machine, and each had been devoured. Now, they were cornered. Casualty projections? Asked High Marshal Reltor of the Voth. His voice was cold stone cracking. 83% total Union losses if the Dominion reaches the core, replied Admiral Sevix of the Drethi. His 6 translucent eyes dimmed with despair. We are out of ships, out of weapons, out of soldiers, someone whispered. Then what remains? The question hung heavy, until the oldest being in the room, Counselor Urok of the Dren, leaned forward. His scales were faded, his voice brittle. There is one option, he said. The Terran contingent. The chamber went silent. A dozen species turned their gaze toward him as though he had spoken a curse. The name Terran had not been uttered in official meetings for centuries. The humans? Growled Sevix. You would unleash them? It is either that, Urok replied, or extinction. The Forgotten Allies humans had joined the Galactic Union 400 years ago, reluctantly, skeptically, and with a reputation that made other species uneasy. They had adapted to the galaxy with shocking speed, mining toxic moons, colonizing death worlds, fighting pirate fleets like they were born to it. But their methods terrified their allies. When diplomacy failed, humans didn't surrender, they improvised. When surrounded, they didn't retreat, they laughed. And when victory was impossible, they made it possible through sheer, horrifying will. In the siege of Raxia, a single Terran Marine battalion had held off 6 Dominion cruisers by boarding them in open space, with magnetic boots, duct tape, and homemade explosives. When the war ended, the Union quietly retired the Terran forces. Humanity had been given a peacekeeping role, which was bureaucratic code for keep them far away from us. Now, centuries later, the Union was losing again, and the humans were still out there, on a quiet blue planet, forgotten by most, waiting. Summoning the Deathworlders, the summons was sent across the void. A month later, a single human ship arrived at Union Command, the UHS Iron Resolve. It was ugly, angular, and looked more like a factory that had learned to fly than a warship. Hull plating was scarred and mismatched, but it radiated a kind of silent menace. From its ramp descended Admiral Elena Vega, commander of the Terran Defense Corps. She wore no armor, no decoration, only a black uniform and a tired expression. So, she said flatly, scanning the assembled alien commanders. You finally decided to call the monsters. Marshal Reltor's throat plates tightened. We prefer the term allies of last resort. Vega gave a humorless smile. Last resort, huh? That's about right. They briefed her on the situation. System after system falling, entire fleets gone. The Kr'thul's biological warships were unstoppable, devouring everything in their path. The Union needed time, reinforcements, miracles. What do you want from us? Vega asked. Distraction? Sevix said. Delay them, perhaps, Vega snorted. Delay? No. You called humans to win. The chamber shifted uneasily. You can't win this war, Sevix hissed. You have seen the projections. Vega's brown eyes hardened like glass. Projections don't fight wars. People do. She turned to her ship's officers. Prep the Deathwing units. We'll show them what delay means. The human war doctrine. Within weeks, the Terran fleet had deployed. They didn't use the sleek ships of the Union. No, their vessels looked like flying foundries, built for function over form. Drones swarmed like angry wasps. Railguns were larger than buildings. Nuclear signatures pulsed from half their hulls. Union tacticians watched in horror. As the humans began their campaign, they didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't defend. They hunted. Instead of building lines, they set traps. Instead of retreating, they baited. Their ships disappeared into asteroid fields, radiation storms, and nebulae. And every time the Kr'thul chased them, something exploded. The humans called it operational entropy warfare. The aliens called it madness. Battle of Lyra Prime. The Dominion's main force, over 2,000 living warships, arrived at Lyra Prime, expecting a broken defense line. Instead, they found silence. No Union ships, no defense grid, just empty space and the faint hum of a gas giant's magnetic field. The Kr'thul commander hissed in confusion, and then his ship's sensors lit up. 1,000 tiny objects surrounded them, cold and inert. Unidentified debris. His second-in-command reported. Then the debris woke up. Every piece of junk was a human drone. Old hulls, satellites, even cargo containers retrofitted with explosives. They ignited their thrusters and slammed into the Kr'thul fleet from all directions. The void turned white. 300 Dominion warships were obliterated in seconds, and from behind the explosion clouds, human ships emerged, silent, burning forward. Vega's voice came over open channel. "Welcome to the end of the galaxy, you bastards." Fear spreads for the first time in centuries. The Kr'thul hesitated. Reports began to spread. Impossible stories of humans turning black holes into minefields, using supernovas as lures, or dropping orbital bombardments that lasted for days. Each tale grew wilder, but every commander who faced them told the same truth. They don't fear death. They make you fear them. Dominion soldiers started abandoning their posts, whispering about the Deathworlders, those who came from the planet where everything tries to kill you, and they won anyway. Even the Union species, who had called humans barbaric, began to watch them with awe. Vega's tactics didn't just stall the Dominion. They broke them. The turning point 6 months into the Terran offensive, the Kr'thul deployed their superweapon, a planet-eater organism called the Devourer of Suns. It consumed energy, ships, even light itself. Entire fleets fell into darkness. The Union panicked. Vega didn't. She requested access to the oldest Terran weapons. Vault, one sealed since the, Ban Treaty of 2319. Inside were war relics that had been considered too destructive even for humans. Among them, Project Ragnarok. When her officers saw what it was, they went silent. "Ma'am," one said softly, "if we use this, we might not have a galaxy left." Vega nodded. "Then we make sure it's the last thing we ever have to use." Operation Ragnarok. The plan was insane. The humans were going to lure the Devourer into the orbit of a neutron star, and then collapse the star with an artificial singularity, annihilating both. Union Command called it suicide. Vega called it Tuesday. The human fleet began the operation. Kr'thul warships followed, screaming through the void. The neutron star loomed, a churning, blinding sphere of death. As the Devourer approached, Vega's voice crackled over comms. "To all Union forces, you wanted time. This is how you buy it." Her ship's reactors overloaded. The iron resolve began to glow. Inside the control room, alarms blared. One officer shouted, "We'll be caught in the collapse." Vega smiled faintly. "That's the point." She pressed the final command. The singularity detonated. Light vanished. The Devourer was torn apart. The Kr'thul fleet disintegrated. Space itself screamed, and then fell silent. When sensors cleared, there was nothing left of the human fleet, just debris, and a quiet, stable neutron remnant. The war was over. Aftermath. Months later, the Galactic Union gathered again. The Kr'thul were shattered, retreating into the outer darkness. The core worlds were safe. Peace had returned, but the cost hung heavy in every mind. Admiral Vega's name was carved into the Hall of Fallen Commanders, but on the edges of Union space, faint transmissions began to appear, encrypted in Terran code. Someone whispered that a few human ships had survived the collapse, that they were still out there, unseen, watching. And when new threats rose, when the galaxy again began to forget what fear meant, a phrase started circulating through the fleets. If all else fails, unleash the humans. Epilogue: the monsters who saved us centuries later. In a museum orbiting the rebuilt world of Lyra Prime, a young Drogar cadet stood before a massive black plaque. It bore only one inscription, words etched in Terran steel: "When hope dies, humanity begins." The cadet frowned. "What does it mean?" he asked his mentor. The old alien sighed, remembering the legends. "It means," he said softly, "that sometimes the monsters you fear most are the ones who save you."